Hello, welcome to Oslo, Norway. We've already been here for a couple of days now, and very excitingly tomorrow we are going to be taking a flight for approximately an hour and a half, I think it is.
Yep, all the way north.
Yeah, all the way north to 130 miles north of the Arctic Circle. But before we do that, I think we need to address something. So there is something, or should I say someone, that is not here.
The story so far. I decided, because I don't like flying, and flying is kind of bad for the environment anyway, I decided to try and travel overland from Breda in the Netherlands all the way to Narvik in the north of Norway.
That's right. Tom has willingly decided to travel over 3,000 kilometers by train and bus, while we spent the same 3 days enlarging our carbon footprint in Oslo.
But this morning I took a bus. I took it from the train station, changed over at Essen, and then took the Flix train, which exists. It's not just buses anymore. And now I'm here, so it's been 9.5 hours.
Somewhere in Oslo.
Good morning, it is day 2. I am sadly about to leave Hamburg. It is 5:30 now. My train leaves at 7 a.m. My sleep was a little bit shorter than I wish it was, because we had to keep the windows of the room open to stop it from overheating. And just below the window, it seems, there were 2 people. It felt like just shouting at the top of their lungs for what seemed like hours in the middle of the night. It was honestly kind of impressive. But that means that I did sleep a little bit shorter than I wanted to, which is okay. We're fine, and today is what's probably going to be the longest day of traveling, so it's going to be about 13.5 hours. We have arrived in the mighty royal city of Stockholm. I am not going to lie, it was a very long train journey, but not necessarily uncomfortably long, if you know what I mean, especially once you get into Sweden. The trains are very comfortable. The scenery was great, you know, it started to get more... I can't describe it other than stereotypically Scandinavian. You started to see pine trees and lakes and sort of cute little red houses. We were all the way in the back, or I was all the way in the back of the train, and so there was a cute little window that I could look out of and see the train track pass below me. So yeah, I came from Hamburg this morning, switched at Copenhagen, and now I am in Stockholm. Right, I spent a very relaxed day in Stockholm today. I wandered around the Royal Palace, I visited the Royal Armoury and the National Museum, but I am now back at Stockholm Central train station because this evening is the last leg of our journey to Narvik. In approximately half an hour, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan, the night train to Luleå and Narvik will arrive on this track. And yeah, then hopefully it's just trying to sleep and waking up in the very north of Norway. I have been disappointed in night trains before, but so far the Scandinavian trains have been very comfortable and very punctual, so I'm sure we'll be fine.
Det var jo du som kom bort til meg og spurte om navnet mitt. Det var jo du som ville at jeg skulle bli med deg. Det var jo du som spurte om vi kunne bli til noe. Og hver gang jeg prøvde å dra, holdt du meg igjen. Som du visste vad du drev med, visste vad som hoppade ned och det føltes så bra. Så godt du...
Somewhere in Oslo. So one of the big problems with Oslo is, much like Great Britain, or not so Great Britain as I should say, it has the issue of when it gets really hot, none of the buildings are designed to deal with it. They're all designed to keep you very warm. So last night was very unpleasant. It's about 30 degrees. You can't open the windows because the tram's going by every 5 minutes, make it sound like the whole building's about to fall down, and all the insects come in. So not the best night's sleep, so I think it's time to leave.
Var det noe jeg gjorde, eller noe jeg sa, da du trakk deg unna, ble jeg nesten...
Hello, welcome to Narvik, Norway. We are approximately 130 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. And guess who we just found?
Whee!
He's just finished his 3,000 kilometer train journey all the way from Breda in the Netherlands. 3.5 days, was it?
Yeah, something like that.
Absolute beast. But yeah, we are here. It is 22 degrees and I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. Lovely stuff. We spent a relaxing 2 days in Narvik, where we climbed the nearby peak Tredjetoppen and enjoyed the abnormally warm Arctic Ocean.
Var det noe jeg gjorde, eller noe jeg sa, da du trakk deg unna, ble jeg nesten narkoman. Alt det du gjorde, ble jeg avhengig av.
Right, so it's finally time to bid farewell to the beautiful city, or maybe even town, I don't know, of Narvik. We're just heading down to the train station. We're going to take a train approximately, I think it's 2.25 hours east into Sweden. So you probably guessed from the title of the video, we are going to be starting the trail called the Kungsleden. We're going to be out there for approximately, say, 7 to 9 days. So we will see you all in Abisko. We retraced the journey that Tom had taken just 3 days earlier, winding our way through the fjords and passing a handful of tiny hamlets before eventually arriving in Abisko. So welcome to Abisko. This is the northern terminus of the Kungsleden trail. We're not going to be doing the whole trail, we're going to be doing the first approximately 110 miles of it to a place called Kvikjokk. So we've got between 7, 8, maybe 9 days to do that. Yeah, how's everyone feeling?
Well, yeah, good for now.
Yeah, good for now. There's a bit of a breeze, it's not too hot, so yeah. Fingers crossed it stays like that. Along with a handful of other hikers on the train, we kicked off the expedition, initially following the Abisko-Jaka River through the Abisko National Park. So we've just done the first hour and a half of the trail or so, and contrary to the Arctic Circle trail, where, as you might remember, the only bridge was kind of on its last legs and kind of falling to bits, well, the Kungsleden does things a little bit differently, and it has suspension bridges over all of the minor tributaries. It's absolutely brilliant. So we've just ticked off our first 10k of the trail. We're now following this large lake across. I'll put the name of it up on the screen in a bit. At the end of this lake, they have the first, they call it a fjall station. It's essentially like a sort of serviced hut. Some of them you can stay in. They have like saunas, like shops. Really varies depending on the station. We alternated between hard-packed earth and boardwalks until we passed by the turning to the fjall station.
Well, this is the bit that can't be touched because it's a national park.
So after our experiences in Greenland, I like to think that we are all relatively well versed when it comes to Arctic pests. So in sheer abundance here, you have mosquitoes, of course, our favourite. I haven't seen any black flies yet, touch wood. But then you also have these, what I'm basically going to assume are kind of horsefly. It's about the size of a small hornet. They're pretty stupid, you can kind of squash them pretty easily, but they look pretty intimidating just based on their size. So yeah, no lack of pests to annoy us, unfortunately. We finished day 1 by crossing over the Shialayaka River via a large suspension bridge. We then made camp on the adjacent river terrace. A hot day of walking necessitated a dunk in the nearby river. So that was one of the most unpleasant baths I've had in a long time. That is absolutely Baltic in there. Yeah, I don't really know what I was expecting. It's literally fed by snow melt, you idiot. Washed and ready for bed, we indulged in the culinary delights of fire pot. So, how's the fire pot meal, Adam?
It's dreadful. I just had the one for the trip, needed to use it up, and it's just as I remember. It tastes a bit like someone got a blender, mixed rice, a bit of moisture, a few kidney beans, and then a cardboard box.
Our first night under the baking midnight sun had mixed results. How did we all sleep?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks.
How did you sleep, Tom?
Very poorly.
After a dehydrated breakfast, we kicked off day 2 by climbing up onto the open fell. It's a bit contrasting to the Arctic Circle trail here in the sense that we saw about 30 to 40 people on that entire trail.
We've seen more than that this morning.
Yeah, exactly. It's very busy. The campsite we were planning on going to last night was like a small shanty town. There must have been about 30 or 40 people in there alone. Luckily we did find a more secluded spot, but...
Although they have bolted up the toilet for some reason.
Yeah, God knows what was going on in there. With our heavy bags gradually crushing our spines, we continued across the open fell, eventually reaching the shore of a large lake that would take us all the way to the next Fjall station. The 28-degree sun was resulting in the rapid melting of the last of the snow patches, but the trail was seldom boggy thanks to the extensive network of boardwalks. We briefly stopped for a spot of ultra-processed lunch by the lake before pushing on towards the Fjall station. So it appears there's like a form of a ferry service along this lake that runs several times a day. You have one of the local Sami herders comes out and you can pay him something extortionate amount of money to get a ferry down to the other end of the lake. Approximately 5k in that direction. We were treated to views of the peaks surrounding Kebnekaise, Sweden's highest mountain, as we crossed over a few meltwater streams. Whoa, that's a bit dodgy. We arrived in the mosquito-infested Alasjärvi Fjall station in the early afternoon, and then immediately left via a very large and bendy suspension bridge. It's a bit rocky.
Yeah, I don't think you should be going on here with like 3 people at a time.
This, so I can play that.
Yeah, you could drive over this, it'd be fine. So we've just left behind the mosquito-infested Fjall station, which is just behind me there up on the hill. We're now walking through what is essentially a giant marsh. No doubt has probably something to do with why there's so many mosquitoes here. We would now be following this valley for the rest of the day as we gradually climbed towards the Tiakta Pass. We finished day 2 on a large terrace on the side of this valley, having walked 22.5 kilometers. Right, it's now day 3 of our attempt to walk the first 2 stages of the Kungsleden. I just wanted to take a bit of time to illustrate to you the issues of trying to walk and camp in the Arctic, and don't get me wrong, there are many of them. So, last night when we went to bed, the sun was over those peaks over there. Proceeding throughout the course of the night, the sun went all the way around here and is now up there. It did not go down below those mountain peaks at all. We are basically being exposed to the sun 24/7, and as you can kind of see, there is no shade here. So I don't want to paint the Arctic with a bad paintbrush per se. Don't get me wrong, the insects are flipping annoying, and the sun doesn't set, so you get sunburn all the time, either in the middle of the night. However, look at that for scenery. We kicked off day 3 with a hit of icy meltwater and some mystery food in a bag. Today would see us climbing up to 1,150 metres, the highest point on the trail. So we are a couple of k's in to day 3. We're just coming up to the bottom of the Tiaka Pass. Just on the horizon there is the sort of the hut fuel station thingy. Then it's about an hour and a half from there up to the summit of the pass. There's basically no breeze today, although we have got a little bit of cloud cover for a change. It's still really quite hot, considering we are about 1,000 metres above sea level, deep in the Arctic Circle. You really wouldn't expect it to be sort of mid 20 degrees. So the original trail would have gone up here, but there's so much meltwater coming down, there's just a massive snow bridge there instead. So crossing across that would be bad news. The snow cover gradually increased as we climbed up the valley, whilst the air temperature gradually decreased to a much more comfortable level in the mid-20s. So underneath all of this, there is a... Oh, fuck! Damn it! Anyway, as I was saying, underneath all of this snow, there is a big meltwater plain. So the snow you can see here is not very thick at all, and you keep falling through it. So snow cover is now becoming the dominant ground surface to deal with, which is really good because it means there's no mosquitoes up here. It does make it, I mean, it is kind of hard work to get through at times, and we do have a tendency to kind of fall through it now and again, as I've sort of previously demonstrated. However, just up ahead is the top of the Tiaka Pass. There's a small like refuge up there. Right, well, there is the top of the pass. So we heard apparently about 2 weeks ago all this snow came down, and it's been pretty much impassable up here until the last week, so I think we've been very lucky with our timing, in all honesty. We enjoyed a spot of insect-free lunch at the top of the pass, as Adam discovered that last night's mosquitoes could indeed bite through socks. The skiers really like those feet, didn't they?
Pretty painful.
We slid down the south side of the pass, eventually landing on the flat glacial valley floor. We would now be following this very grand glacial valley for the rest of the day, all the way to the next fuel station. Right, we're just coming up to the Salka, I think that's how you say it, hut complex / fuel station. It's quite a big one again, so there's quite a few sort of spaces indoors for sleeping, space outside for camping. I think there's a sauna as well, and a shop. We were welcomed into the Salka fuel station by a large group of hikers, who were thankfully keeping the mosquitoes busy. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
We finished day 3 next to the raging Tiaka River, having walked 25 kilometres and climbed 435 metres. After nearly getting washed away in the evening ice bath, we made dinner and tucked in for the night. Right, so this is the morning of day 4 of our Kungsleden trek. Now, it might not seem like much, but the sun went down over those peaks at about 8:30 last night. Now, that is the first time in the last basic 3 days we had any sort of prolonged shade. And yeah, it came back up again, admittedly, at about 3 AM at the bottom of this valley, but still, we had some shade, and we had, not darkness, I'm not going to say that, but we had some darker conditions than bright sun for the night. We continued south along the Tiaka River, the peaks surrounding Kebnekaise seemingly now very close to our east. So just at about 9k of day 4, you can just see over there in the valley floor, that is Singi. It has a longer name, but I can't remember what it is. The next sort of fuel station on the trail. We arrived into Singi in time for an early lunch, before pushing on down the valley. Many hikers detour here to climb Kebnekaise, which resulted in a significant reduction in traffic on the trail.
So we're about 15k into day number 4. Just up behind me is the Tiaka Pass that we went over yesterday. And very thankfully, we have got a relatively continuous breeze coming up this valley. Absolutely brilliant. It's the first time in God knows how many days there's actually been some decent wind up here. It's blowing the insects away and it's keeping us semi-cool. We're going to be proceeding on down this glacial valley for another 10k or so, and it descends into a small forest where the next sort of fjall station is.
It may not look like it, but we do actually talk to each other on these trips.
So we're now leaving that large sort of glacial meadow and now dropping down into what's essentially a very narrow slot canyon, I believe.
Much like the mosquitoes in Adam's tent, our dreams of a cool, shaded forest were quickly squashed. The reality was that the birch trees trapped the heat, sheltered us from the wind, and provided really poor shade. This meant the insects were able to swarm freely. We had a short break at the next fjall station before pushing on into the evening.
So throughout the trek we've been using this very handy guidebook written by Mike Lang. It's got loads of helpful tips on various stages of the trails, points out sort of like points of interest, camp spots, etc. However, I kind of slept up on the ball here, where it suggested a very good camp spot just south of that fjall station. Turns out it's just essentially a small island in the middle of a delta. And we know who likes deltas, don't we? Buzz, buzz, buzz!
After a further 30 minutes, we crossed over the roaring Katungyaka River to find a perfect camp spot on the opposite bank.
So look at this for a camp spot. Roaring river over here, suspension bridge, spots here, here and here, a bench, and we've got a bathing spot down here. You could not ask for more.
We finished day 4 with another round of gourmet cuisine in a bag and a slightly sketchy dunk in the river, having walked 26 kilometres.
Right, so this is now day 5 of our Kungsleden trek. We're all just getting packed up this morning and ready to go. Rather excitingly, today is the first day on the trail where we have a lake crossing. So oh, that fucking mosquito! So according to the guidebook, there are rowing boats around. So hopefully we'll be able to get across that. If not, I don't know what we'll do. We'll have to figure that out when we get there.
We kicked off day 5 by climbing up onto the open fell for a few kilometres, before descending down to the first lake crossing.
So we just made it to the next fjall station. And look what they have here. Free lingonberry squash. That is just what we need. So we found ourselves a rowing boat. Great news, we're being eaten to shit by insects here. So let's get out onto this lake as quick as we can. So just as where we have these complimentary life jackets, because it turns out that none of us have any clue how to actually row a boat. We've now established that you need to be facing backwards in order to be able to go in a direction, although we do need to go over that way.
A bit more forceful.
Yeah, a bit onto the other side, Adam. As you can see, we have absolutely no clue what we're doing here. Right, we made it across the lake, finally. We had a little sort of lunch stop on the sides of the lake because there were a break in the insects, thankfully. We're now pushing on for the final 16 kilometres of stage 1 to Vakataver. Once we get there, we then have a short break in between the 2 stages where we have to take a bus. But more on that tomorrow. God, it is hot. It is really hot today. Oh my God.
We pushed on through the baking 30-degree sun, stopping at every available river to refill our bottles. The peaks of Sarak National Park eventually came into view, as did the valley that we would soon be descending into.
Okay, we are now doing the last couple of Ks of stage 1. We're just dropping down the valley into Vacataver, which is on the side of this big lake in front of us. I can't remember the name of it.
The descent into Vacataver was a brutal 450 metres of quad-busting glacial till slope, eventually emerging onto a paved road.
Right, so this is our spot for the night, right next to a car park, which is literally just up there. We did
have here apparently.
So we did get slightly scammed. We thought we were paying for a campsite. We're not paying for a campsite because we just get essentially a small rock ledge. We're actually paying for the use of the building and the services only, of which there was no shower. So yeah, we got a little bit scammed, but never mind. We're going to sit inside out of the sun and have some dinner and maybe jump in the lake later. So, word of advice, if you're going to bring Haribo and chocolate on such a trek like this, don't put it in the top of your bag where it's exposed to 25-degree heat all day. It goes yeah.
We enjoyed a pleasant evening dunk in the relatively warm lake, did our washing, and then tucked in for the night.
Right, so it's now day 6 of our Kungsleden trek. So we've just been chilling at this fuel station for the past couple of hours. At about 10:30 this morning, we're going to be hopping on a bus that goes 1 hour east. We're then going to be hopping on a ferry and starting stage 2.
The 30-kilometre bus journey took over an hour and a half, as the bus driver decided he needed to stop for an hour to buy a pizza in some random roadhouse. It did, however, drop us off just in time to catch the ferry over to the start of stage 2.
Okay, we're at the start of stage 2. We just got off the ferry. It's just coming up to about 12:30 in the afternoon. So we are ready to get going. I think we have approximately 36 miles or so. That is about 60k to do before we get to Kvikjok, which is going to be the end of stage 2 and the end of our trip.
We climbed out of Saltolorkta through a birch forest and on to the open fell.
So it might not seem like much, but there is some cloud cover today and there's actually a decent breeze, which means one of two things. A, I'm not sweating out of every single orifice, and B, there aren't insects bothering us. Today is a good day. So you remember how I was saying it's really nice that it's cloudy and it's cool? That is kind of the case. However, you've got thunder over there, it's tipping it down over there, and then up ahead we've got another one coming through. So it swings and roundabouts, I guess, isn't it?
We continued across the breezy open fell, thankfully dodging the various oncoming thunderstorms. Sarak National Park now dominated the views ahead as we gradually descended off the open fell.
So we're just coming up to our final sort of 5k of day 6. We were half expecting this would be a really late finish today, given that we only started about 12:30. But the reality is that the ground underfoot is really, really good. It is a bit rocky, but it's pretty smooth generally. The weather is much more favourable for us Brits, sort of overcast and cool. The rain didn't hit after all that preparation, so we're feeling good. And we should be able to get into the next shell station sort of 6:30 or so.
As we descended into the birch forest, the clouds parted and the wind died down. The insects wasted no time in ruining the final hour of our day.
This forest is hellish. There's so many insects in here. So we made it to the next fuel station. It is absolutely plagued with insects here. It is not very pleasant, so I've smothered myself in poison, and that's just about making it tolerable.
So we've been informed that there are no longer rowing boats to cross this lake. They were taken away because people kept getting injured and getting stuck out there or something. So we've got to be up to catch the ferry tomorrow at 7:30. We paid the rather steep £20 to camp at the Fjell station. We went for a dunk in the lake and then sat inside and enjoyed our dehydrated meals. Right, so it is just coming up to 6:45 on day 7. I was kind of thinking to myself last night, oh, sounds like it's raining outside. No, it wasn't rain. It was just the continuous bombardment of insects all throughout the night. We walked a few hundred metres over to the home of Anna and Lars, who operated the ferry service. Then, to our shock, we found out the ferry cost 400 Swedish krone per person, which consumed our entire trip's cash reserves. So today we've got approximately 8k over the fells to a place called Akse, and then we have our 4th and final lake crossing, which my understanding is there are rowing boats. So I'll have another crack at trying to do that properly. Along with all the other hikers we met in the Fjell station last night, we climbed away from the jetty through the forest. This climb was by far the steepest on the trail. Upon emerging onto the open fell, we caught our first sight of the peak Skerafi, which overlooked Akse. So we are now just descending off the fells into a place called Akse, which is just another sort of Fjell station on the side of a lake. But sort of over in front of me and off to the right is Sarek National Park, long sort of reputed to be Europe's last true wilderness. The beautifully turquoise glacial lake gradually came into view, which we would later have to cross. Made it to Akse. Now to get across that lake. Akse was by far the prettiest Fjell station on the trail. The hay meadows and Skerafi on the horizon made for a pleasant walk down to the lake shore. So, there was one rowing boat left. And the system they have here is basically there always has to be one rowing boat on the shore. So we are essentially taking quite a big gamble here by taking the boat across, and we are hoping that in the time it takes us to cross, someone else is going to come the opposite way to replenish that boat. I don't know what will happen if they don't. We don't really want to have to row back with another one in tow, so we'll meet that hurdle when it comes to it. So you can probably tell that the water we are paddling over at the moment is really quite milky in texture, almost chalk-like. So that's a result of Sarek National Park, which is over here. Now you've got a load of glaciers essentially coming down and feeding this meltwater lake. Now those glaciers are grinding away at the rock face and producing something called rock flour, which is essentially staying in suspension in this lake. So you can't drink this water. Well, it'll make you ill, and it'll probably give you kidney stones in the long run. So it does look very inviting though, as I'm sure you will agree. So, a little update. We've been here for about an hour now. Thankfully, a father and 2 sons from Sweden came down the trail. They were planning on catching the ferry, which coincidentally turned up at the same time as they did. But somehow, just somehow, we managed to convince them to row our boat back across for us, take it back to the station. So thankfully, we do not have the obligation of trying to deal with that mess, which is really good. So we're just having a bit of lunch, and then we'll push on up into the Sarek National Park. So as we all know from these trips, Adam has a bit of a habit of forgetting his walking pole. He's done really well. He's got to day 7, only to leave it on the other side of the lake. So
got a stick for now.
He's got a stick for now. At some point we will carve him a new walking pole, which will be even better than the £5 one from Go Outdoors.
So I think we've been very, very lucky. The thunderstorm is now up off to our left, still sort of heading north. So I think we have just clipped the edge of it.
We continued through the forest, successfully dodging all of the thunderstorms. Until we didn't.
Alright, we've battened down the hatches. The rucksack covers are on. Hopefully we don't need to go to coats, but it is starting to drizzle already. So we're now huddling beneath some very stumpy conifer trees whilst that storm passes over. So we've just spent the last half an hour just sort of huddling underneath some dwarf pines, waiting out that absolute beast of a lightning storm. Somehow in the process I have managed to tear my trousers in half. I don't know how I did that, so they're being held together with safety pins now. So yeah, we're now going to push up onto the open moorland and see if we can find somewhere to camp. And fingers crossed we don't get struck by lightning in the middle of the night. Right, we finished our climb up out of the forest finally. We've got a small bit of plateau now, but more importantly, we are now in Sarek National Park. It's very exciting. Europe's last true wilderness, of which there is a grand total of 1 footpath, and we're currently on it.
We continued across the open fell until we found a perfect spot next to a raging river. The waterfall did unfortunately have leeches in it, but you can't win them all.
So it is now day 8 and our final day, where we are going to be pushing all the way into Kvikjok, which will mark the end of our Kungsleden trek. As we discovered last night that you're not safe even in the water, this river here had leeches in it, which was a nasty surprise, which reconfirms our assumption that absolutely everything in the Arctic wants to try and drink your blood. Anyway, we'll finish getting packed up, we'll hit the trail.
We spent a pleasant hour on the open fell before gradually descending into a seemingly endless forest.
So our final day is an estimated 25 kilometers, which is almost exclusively within a coniferous forest. So it is shaded, but the insects do seem to like these forests, unfortunately.
The heat trap effect of the coniferous trees rendered the shade completely irrelevant. As the forest heated up, the horseflies came out in their squadrons. This made the rest of the day very unpleasant.
Only 6k to Kvikjok. I think we're all just about done, to be honest. This forest is going to be the fucking death of us. It's absolutely infested with insects. It's
so
like
hot.
It's like 30 degrees. There's no wind. Oh, I'm done with the day. I'm done with today, to be honest. So this is the famous overhanging stone that Adam really hates.
Well, when it's sold as the highlight of the day, it kind of puts a downer on it a bit.
Yeah, it's basically been the only landmark we've had in this endless forest, and it's not even worth taking a picture of. Let's be honest, guys.
We continued through the character building forest until we eventually dropped down to the outskirts of Kvikjok.
There we go. End of the Kungsleden,
Hooray!
stage 2.
Thank goodness.
Woo! That was a tough final day.
Yeah, that was a tough day. Oh. Well, the next one, I guess. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
And that brings our Kungsleden trek to a close. That evening we indulged in dinner and some frozen treats from the Fjell station before catching the bus to the nearest train station the following morning.
So we've just been kicked off the bus in Jokkmokk, and the driver's just driven away with all of our stuff. So hopefully he comes back.
So we are now in the small hamlet of Murjak, I think. There's absolutely nothing here other than this train station and a self-service food kiosk that nobody can access. So yeah, we're stuck here now for the next 3 and a bit hours until our train arrives so we can go on to Luleå. We spent a relaxing 3 days in Luleå, where we visited Gammelstad, abused some hire bikes, and claimed another overseas territory for Great Britain.
In the name of King Charles III, on the 26th of July 2025, in an expedition led by Captain Adam Baker Goodison, we hereby claim this land for His Majesty the King, and the name shall be New Egypt. New Egypt! What riches await us here?
Okay, our time in Luleå is now up, and we are on this very cramped night train heading all the way down to Stockholm. It's about 9:30. We should be getting to Stockholm tomorrow at about 11:30. We spent 3 further days exploring Stockholm before flying back to the UK.